Welcome everybody. You're here on the set at Midas Letter Live. I'm with the venerable Mr. Milewski.
Hello everyone. Ben, how you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm ready for a new week. I'm on the set. I'm usually doing the writing, doing the analysis, but I like being on the set. I like hosting the show from time to time.
I noticed today that Christine Lagarde, I guess she's the head of the IMF, is that?
Yep, she's the head of the IMF.
They had her on CNBC this morning, and she seemed to be, big discussion was, where's the growth going to come from? You know, and then I heard some other guy being interviewed talking about, you know, looks like the world's heading into a recession. These are just views, but you know, it just feels like, you know, the market's down 10% this year. You know,
it feels a little bit heavy too.
You know, the Fed's talking about, you know, we got to keep raising rates, and all of a sudden they abruptly stop. You know, and Amazon's dropped back 20% from its highs. Apple's off quite a bit. It'll be interesting. It'll be interesting.
It will, although we don't focus tremendously on the macroeconomic environment.
Right.
I'm a firm believer that there's no stopping the growth pattern. Again, I read some of David Rosenberg's work, who's a Glufkin chef economist there, chief economist there. And
is he the guy that James went and saw at that luncheon here?
You know what? It is.
He's got the rules for trading, and
very smart guy. Very smart guy.
I don't know. He was kind of. I don't think he was saying, you know, it's up and away. I think he was saying that he gets the sense that the market's not a buy and hold market anymore. It's a trader's market. Yeah. Which is, you know, I think that would have to happen if things were, in fact.
Yeah, they would. And one of the things he notes, and I do read a lot of his stuff where I can.
Obviously a smart guy, right?
Obviously a smart guy. You're a chief economist at, you know, any sort of Bay Street firm. You're a smart guy.
I'm a chief economist at my own firm, and there's only one employee, and that's me. So, you know.
Exactly.
I got promoted. I get fired and promoted every day.
Yeah, you get to fire yourself.
But, yeah, exactly.
But what I'm trying to get at is one of the things that he elucidates is that, you know, some people have come online in the media, CNBC, social media, and they cheered the fact that the Federal Reserve is the tightening cycle looks like it's coming to an end. There's probably going to be a pause, and they may even actually loosen in the coming months, depending on economic policy. And some people are cheerleading that, thinking that, you know, the market could keep going up from there, right? But historically speaking, according to David Rosenberg, that actually usually signifies the top of the market, because, you know, the damage has already been done.
Right.
The hike in interest rates, there's always a lag effect, right? So even though they're stopping, you know, the full impact of those interest rate hikes hasn't really been felt on the market yet, and we still have quantitative tightening going on, which acts as pretty much a 25 basis point hike for every 200 or 250 billion dollars that they tighten, and there's been research with the Fed on that.
I think I just saw that the country of India just lowered their rate by a quarter. You know, so and they I'm going to start paying attention to that. There's a list. You can get all the rates, all the 10-year rates of all the countries, and, you know, I think there's a few like Switzerland, Germany are at the top, and they're negative, and then it goes down. You know, Mexico's quite high. The United States is quite high compared to European rates. It's mind-boggling to think that you can get more money with the 10-year U.S. Treasury than you can with the Spanish Treasury.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. We're going to revisit that topic later.
Okay.
Right now, here's Ricky with the news. Oh, actually, before we do that, we're going to talk about what's coming up on today's show. Ricky is coming up with the news after this avatar ends. At 3:15, we have James West coming online, depending upon availability. The connection is a little bit dicey where he is right now in the Yucatan. 3:30, we have Peter Miller, the CEO of SLANG Worldwide. And at 3:45, we have Rob Hill from Health Therapeutics. He's going to tell us, give us an update of what's going on with his company. At 4:05, we have Deepak Anand, cannabis business expert, and he's at the policy chamber at Norml. And at 4:15, we have Cannabis and Sperm feature with Sean Cookson.
Is that like a cannabis and sperm whale?
Yeah, maybe he's talking about cannabis and whales. So we'll have to see. I haven't seen that segment yet. But here's Ricky with the news.
Thanks, Ben. And here are the headlines moving markets today. Aurora Cannabis has completed its first commercial export of cannabis oil to the United Kingdom. The first line of products are being dispensed from a pharmacy. Authorities there recently granted the company approval under its new legal framework that came into effect on November 1st, 2018. Under the new UK framework, specialist doctors can legally issue prescriptions for cannabis-based medicines when they agree that their patients could benefit from this treatment. Flowr One Holdings Inc. announced that it has entered into a master lease agreement with Reich Brothers Commercial Finance. The agreement is for up to $30 million in lease financing for equipment at its 455,000 square foot greenhouse and production facility in North Las Vegas, Nevada. The company has completed an initial draw of $10 million. Green Growth Brands has entered into an agreement to allow the company to gain access to 108 shop locations in U.S. malls owned and operated by the Simon Property Group. Pursuant to the arrangement, GGB will further expand its chain of CBD-infused personal care product shops under the Seventh Sense Botanical Therapy brand and other GGB brands. TerAscend Corp announced the signing of definitive securities purchase agreements, facilitating a significant investment in 3 entities in California. These operate the award-winning retail dispensary brand known as the Apothecarium. The purchase agreements also include the acquisition of a vertically integrated operation in Nevada with cultivation, edible manufacturing, and an Apothecarium retail location. TerAscend has agreed to pay a cash consideration of $73.7 million plus proportionate voting shares in the equity of TerAscend, equivalent to 7.325 million TerAscend common shares. Based on the price of TerAscend's common shares from Friday's close, this would represent total consideration of approximately $118.4 million. Vivo Cannabis announced that the company's subsidiary, AB Can Medicals Inc., has received approval from Health Canada for its most recent license amendment request, allowing for the sale of cannabis oil. WeedMD has completed its first shipment of medical cannabis products to Shoppers Drug Mart. WeedMD branded products are now available for sale on the pharmacy's newly launched medical cannabis sales website, cannabis.shoppersdrugmart.ca. In broader market news, there are a total of 65 S&P 500 companies and 2 of the 30 Dow Jones Industrial Average companies reporting earnings this week. Although this will be meaningful for the stocks in question, from an index point of view, the impact is likely to be muted. This is because most of the major firms and sector bellwethers have now reported, and macro risk events will likely saturate most of the market attention for now. And that's your news for today.
So Ed, picking up on that conversation where we left off, you're talking about interest rates in other countries that are lower than the United States right now, or going negative rates?
The European countries, notably Japan, obviously. You know, the one thing they keep talking about Japan, like they have so much debt, but they owe the money to themselves. Like they don't borrow outside the country. So, you know, it's sort of like, you know, let's say you got an extended family and everybody owes money, and you got the dad, he's borrowing money from his kids, but they've got the money to lend them, and it's all within the thing. I don't think that's as bad as if you owe money to everybody else. Like Canada owes a lot of money to outside countries.
Yep.
But they also have money to earmark. It's really weird. Like I saw where they're going to earmark a bunch of money for Haiti again, because Haiti's got, you know, some problem. Maybe it wasn't Haiti. Maybe it was Venezuela. Anyway, it doesn't matter. There's a lot of shit going on, as you know, and rates are really low, and things are slowing down. It would appear they're slowing down.
Yeah, absolutely. And just so our audience knows, there is some technical difficulties with the connection with James in the Yucatan Peninsula, so we're not going to go to him today. Hopefully we have him on the program tomorrow. But just continuing with that dialogue, I agree. And in fact, some people, economists, believe that the U.S. debt is getting so high that the U.S. economy is becoming sort of a microcosm of what the Japanese economy is. That is, debt is getting so high that there's no way to normalize interest rates to any sort of degree right now, like you could historically, where you could raise them to in the 80s, I think they brought them to, Paul Volcker brought them to 19.5%, I think it peaked, something like that.
The Canada savings bonds peaked at 19. You could actually invest your money. Now they cut the limit, and that was very close to the peak. So I think that would have been in 1979, sometime in there, when also gold peaked. Gold peaked in 79, and I know if you had cash, look, if your household is swimming in debt, it's hard to grow. It's hard for everybody especially for the guy that's got to pay the interest, the dad usually, or not. I don't want to be. Could be the team and the kids are oblivious maybe, but if the country's in serious debt and things slow down, it's not good. It's not good. It causes problems. There's cutbacks and people start losing jobs. Anyway.
Yeah, it's not good because that's what we saw in Japan, right? Where they couldn't normalize interest rates anymore, so they've kept them for going on something like 20 years. Well, the rates are so low, but at least they owe the money to themselves. They do, but there's no velocity of money anymore. There's no growth because there's nowhere they can't expand. They have to keep interest rates it's a zombification of the market right now.
I know. It'll be interesting to see how they do this. And the car industry's slowing down. They're talking about.
Yeah, there's no question growth is slowing, and that's sort of the reality. Business cycle is nearing a peak, and at some point it's going to. And I think my earlier point about the cheerleading squad saying that interest rates isn't going to go higher. Maybe the S&P 500 will reach 3,000. Maybe it will, but usually, historically speaking, that's not really a good place to be for the market. And cannabis investors, especially, which is our focus, have to prepare for the possibility of some pretty severe crosswinds coming. Although the hockey stick growth curve that we spoke about before, it will be in contrast to that, so they might actually hold up better. Who knows?
And the couple of the drivers have been extremely high real estate prices in Japan, Vancouver, and Toronto. And the wealth effect, your real estate's going up and up. But we haven't had that. If you look at the statistics and read what they say in the paper, it's been slim pickings here in Toronto for real estate. Now, I don't know about the condo markets and downtown and everything, but certainly houses have come down in price.
Yeah, it's come down a bit, and sales have slowed, to my understanding. Now, I don't know if you're aware of this, Ed, but I'm going to throw out a pretty interesting fact out there. But during the Japanese bubble in the late 80s, at its height, at the real estate bubble, I believe some sort of kingdom in Tokyo was worth more than a piece of real estate in Tokyo was worth more that had the emperor or something like a house. The emperor was worth more than the state of California. The entire state of California. That's how bad the real estate
stat I remember was that if you took a 100,000 yen note, a note that said 100,000 yen, and you put it on the ground in central Tokyo, that the ground under it was worth more than the note.
Seriously?
That was a statistic. So that piece of land was 100. That's what they said.
That's $1,000 bill, U.S. approximately. Yeah. Right.
Well, it was crazy. It was crazy.
Wow.
You go look at a 30-year, 40-year chart. And look back to when the yen, when that whole Tokyo thing. There was I remember a line: the yen for yen. The yen being the word the desire. The desire for the yen for yen.
Oh, the yen for yen. Oh, right.
Yeah, right. So it was a bubble. And it's still recovering from it. So, to my point, you get into a bubble that bursts, it takes a long time to get back there.
Yeah, and you don't want to have this zombification of the market where you can't, it's a very bad place to not being able to raise interest rates anymore. Unfortunately, that's where the U.S. seems to be going. If you look at a timeline, every successive peak in the business cycle now, they can't raise interest rates. They can only raise interest rates less and less. So we'll see how that pans out. Right now, we're going to go to... we're going to take a look at some of the Midas Letter cannabis charts.
Okay.
James was going to look at that, but we're going to look at that anyway.
I can.
The control room has them up.
They got them up there.
They do have it up there right now. We're seeing
That's the large one, right? That's the big cannabis. You can click on that.
It's right on our website. If you go to the cannabis heading, Biggest losers right here. It's all tier 1. Right from the get-go, the tier 1s have had a bad day. Canopy Growth is down.
Everyone's well, they're not all down, but if you look at this,
no, only a couple of the mid majors are up. Organigram and TerAscend, which has a lot of footprints in the U.S. now, is up, but most of the complex is down. Yeah, Kronos Group is around even, so they're doing better, relatively speaking.
Yeah, no, that's the winners. Okay, so Organigram's up 3%. 2 winners. Oxley is no change, and the rest are down. That's the big index. Down, looks like down 5%.
Now, anecdotally, what I'm hearing and seeing in the marketplace is that there's been a palpable concern with some of the potential earnings coming out this week with Canopy and Aurora Cannabis and a couple others, and there's some.
Are we getting earnings? Is it this week we're getting earnings?
Yeah, I believe Aurora reports after the bell tonight, and Canopy tomorrow, I believe. But there's some concern that perhaps valuations are running ahead of earnings, and there's a little bit of profit taking here.
Well, when a mine goes into production. Sometimes they say the stock peaks the day before it starts producing, and there was a recent copper mine. So, back to the cannabis space, if the numbers don't look like they're reaching into those valuations, the valuations will come back to, the prices, or the prices will back off, the valuations will come down, get closer to what's really happening.
Yep. And we all have to face it. Valuations are a little bit aggressive, but as they should be, because the growth is so high. But it is an early stage growth complex, and people are looking. They're not really looking ahead 6 months ahead. They're looking at how it's going to be in 2020. Rob Sands, of course, at Constellation Growth, saying that they're going to be $1 billion revenues within 12 to 16 months. So people are looking at that. But that being said, some short-term,
here's a small cap cannabis index down 3%.
So a little bit less.
Namaste leading the pack there, down 9.65. Emblem down 8. You can go down the list, but that's all. That looks like that's all red. Every stock. Now let's hit that. Yeah, there we go. So we got a few that are up. Green thumbs up. Supreme's up 1%. But the percents up are tiny.
A couple MSOs there, and I tweeted out this morning that the MSOs, multi-state operators in the U.S., were performing better than the HMMJ, the Canadian LPs. So last week, I believe they lost, the U.S. cannabis complex only lost 3 or 4% or 4 or 5%, something like that, while Canadian cannabis lost about double that. So the outperformance is continuing so far this week. Now, you want to hit this CSE, Canadian Venture?
Yeah, there you go. Right now, where are we there? Down 2% as in general. I guess Namaste's made both.
Is this the?
Some of them are dual listed, right? Sorted in both categories. But look, that's all red. And now, here's one. Fluorotech test up 8 cents. I'm going to make a note of that one.
Yeah, Chiron. Chiron's still holding up well, which is
Chiron. Have done some things right.
Pretty impressive, because they've had some of the biggest gains in the junior complex. So
yeah,
that's great.
Yeah, that 261 holding. Well, they just did that big funding at 220, raised $25 million.
Yep. And they've also acquired a company in Latin America, and they partnered with Dixie Brands. We talked to Chuck Smith the other day.
And Vicente Fox, former president of Mexico's on their board.
Yep.
They've been maybe a little slower to promote and bang the drum, but they're making some good moves.
Making some huge headway.
Yeah.
I've wrote
valuation isn't nuts. It's not nuts. It's not like, it's not $500 million.
Yeah, it's not a $1 billion company, correct.
It's like a couple $100 million?
Yeah, well, and before the move, I think it was only around 80. You could have had it for quite a few months, around 80, 90 million, under 100 million. So
there you go, and that's the last. I guess that's the last one. Now that one's up. There you go, the CSE, the good old CSE.
Good old CSE.
And a few there minus 11%, but there's got to be several that are up. So let's hit the up. Let's hit that percentage. Look at this.
Tree of knowledge. Okay.
Whoa.
Not a company I'm familiar with, but that's a pretty decent move.
Yeah. Maybe you can smoke some of the leaves from that tree of knowledge and
make it the tree of
get some
highness.
knowledge. Get some knowledge.
Yeah, we're hoping to have them on the program soon. They've caught our attention, so our viewers would stay tuned for that interview coming up.
So Votus and Tree of Knowledge are up substantially, but from very low levels. So a stock that's, I mean, that's why I like buying these small ones, and I like because if you buy them close to zero, I mean, they can only go down so far.
Yeah, you know what? The small ones are. Like,
if you know what you're doing,
the rewards are great. But if you don't know what you're doing, it can get you in a lot of trouble.
You don't want to go into a big one that becomes a small one.
Yes.
You don't want to go in on the big list, and then a few months later you're in the bad list.
You want to stay on the good list. It's about staying on the good list.
Just like at Christmas with Santa Claus, you want to be on that. When he checks his list, checking it twice.
Naughty or nice.
Anyway. Okay.
So what do you think of Aurora? Or do you have any opinions on Aurora? Are you following that story?
Well, I when I look at this and I see these big ones rolling over a bit, as we did after big runs, my experience is don't go in there just yet. Just simmer. Wait for them to. Like we saw Aphria. It went way down and then started to rise, and it looked like it was rolling over, and then it shot up.
Yep.
So you don't have to jump in it. You can wait for some better signals, better outlook. Let's get some of these earnings out of the way and see what happens.
Agreed.
So I'd be sitting in sidelines right now watching. To a degree,
that might be a good call. If anybody who follows the pot sector realizes that moves in both directions tend to go up in inordinate amount, right? So, on this recent bullish impulse, we saw Canopy Growth rise over 100%, and there wasn't any over catalyst. So, I mean, if you were looking at 40, 50% move in a couple weeks, you would be thinking, okay, that is a pretty big move. There's no, I mean, they got a hemp license along with 62 others in New York, and that was great. They're getting involved in the U.S., and that's great. But there wasn't really that bang-on catalyst, and yet it's still, it rose by a large degree.
And I thought they overshot. I thought, I kept looking for them hitting a wall and then maybe going sideways, but no, they just kept moving. They sort of broke through and made it look like they were breaking out. Just enough that when you thought maybe now, maybe it's safe to go in the water, it was the wrong time. And I noticed, because I like WeedMD, and I know management there, and they've been on the show, I think they announced that now you can buy through the Big V, no, not the Big V.
Shoppers Drug Mart?
Shoppers Drug Mart,
yep.
Sorry. You can buy their medical marijuana on
their platform.
on the Shoppers website.
Yep.
And so what you'd think that's as good as an announcement you're going to get, and WeedMD's down 9 cents today.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You know what?
I think some of the news was already known, but I mean, this was the official launch.
But that's what I've noticed. If you're a student of the market, look, buy the rumor, sell the news, right?
Yeah.
So maybe the rumor was out there, now the news is out, people say, I'll take my profits. And then if you've just bought today, you're thinking, what profits? Then that can work against you. So it's not tough. It's at best it's difficult. So
we have Keith Merker, their CEO, coming on tomorrow. Yeah. And one thing I'd like to ask him,
he lives in London. He lives in London, Ontario.
He lives in London. Do you know him?
Yeah, I know. I've interviewed him, and we've gone out for sushi, and we've talked about things. I had a chance to get into this real early. Maybe I'm too old to be smarty anymore. Maybe I'm my brain's pickled.
Yeah, he's always a good interview, and I think I'd like to ask him. When I look at the Shoppers Drug Mart deals and the pharmacy deals, I think people have a tendency to maybe underplay the importance of it, because you know, there's a mentality that, not everybody, but I mean, there's a mentality that, you know, I could just go to the OSC or go to the provincial stores and purchase cannabis. You know, I don't need to purchase at Shoppers Drug Mart, which historically, you know, tends to have elevated prices, a little bit on the markup on, you know, some of their goods, or at least that's reputation. So maybe it's not a big thing, but people are perhaps discounting the fact that as the Manulifes get in, as the Sun Lifes get in, and the drug coverage becomes more apparent, right? The companies with supply agreements with the Shoppers Drug Mart are going to be the beneficiary of drug plans covering those cannabis. So people don't have to go to the OCS. It's going to be a nice sales driver for these companies.
From a personal experience level, and I can assure you, I've had plenty of personal experience in the marijuana space prior to it being legal. Like I wasn't that fussy about
where you received it.
Well, it's not so much where, but you know, what is it? Does it have THC in it? Does it have, you know, like what's the ratio?
The ratios.
Yeah, so now that I've learned a lot from the show, hey, right here, paying attention, you know, I would say, yeah, now that it's legal, you can sort of say, well, I like a little bit more of the CBD aspect to it. Or if you've got pain, I mean, it really, I think that the consumer is better for it.
Yeah, I agree.
You know, because sometimes you get some stuff and guys say, be careful with this shit. You know, you take a couple hits of this and
you're out.
Yeah, you know, whoa. Anyway, yeah. So yeah, the medical stuff, and you know, I know some older gentlemen that have never smoked or take pot. Now they do, and you know what? They like it because it actually relaxes them.
That's a good topic. So anecdotally, you're a little bit older, Ed. Do you know?
Little bit older. Thank you.
I was giving you the benefit of the doubt there, but
age before beauty.
Age before beauty. But do you actually know a lot of your friends, a lot of neighbors, people in your age bracket? Are they partaking in the cannabis experience where they're using it more for pain than they used to? Do you know anything like that?
I don't have a lot of friends, but that's another story. No, yeah, I know a few people. I mean, I think that in the word I can see, like if, for instance, I went into a dispensary recently to pick up a joint, one joint, maybe
just
two or three.
One pre-roll?
Maybe 5. I thought it was a lot of young, like millennial types. That's the sense I got. Like I don't see
that huge,
you know,
huge senior market yet.
You know, I think one of the beer companies said, you know, that like beer sales are definitely down, and I think they're losing market share to the potheads. Not potheads, but you know, like guys sit around and play, you know, like esports, and they're playing these sophisticated games, probably firing up a whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
then that's a lot cheaper than spending. You know, you go to a bar downtown. What's it going to cost you for 6-7 beers unless you go to Mercado?
Yeah, I think so, and I think the young people like the fact that cannabis tends to you can have more of concentration with it. You know, if you have 3 or 4 beers, you know, you start to lose your concentration a little bit. It doesn't enhance performance. If you have a little bit of cannabis, as long as you don't go over the deep end, a lot of people actually think it's really beneficial for attention deficit disorder. People actually, you know, there's been tons of anecdotes of famous people who have done well who swear that they've gone through university just smoking cannabis, or the night before doing it for a test. There's a lot of anecdotes out there.
I wrote an exam, and I took an economics exam in first year, and I was I think I was pretty well
lit
stoned, and I remember getting a mark that was, I thought, whoa, I don't get marks like this ever. And it was like a very high mark. And anyway, so I immediately associated, well, this stuff, you got to smoke this stuff all the time. You got to be careful what you write, what kind of exams you're writing, I guess. But
of course, you don't want to be taking the bar exam with that under the influence. But
you know, we've had these discussions, but generally speaking, I'd say a little bit of alcohol, no problem. But if you get toasted up pretty good, you can do some stupid things on alcohol.
Yeah.
I don't see that happening with marijuana. I think if anything, you just get sort of a little withdrawn, and you get into your own little world, but you're peaceful.
Yep.
Like there's no.
So far, traffic accidents haven't gone up statistically since
Is that a
legalization.
fact?
I believe so. Yeah, I read something on that. So.
Yeah.
So.
Well.
To be continued.
Yeah.
Right now, we're going to talk to Peter Miller, who is the CEO of SLANG Worldwide.
SLANG Worldwide Incorporated is a cannabis-focused consumer packaged goods company focused on acquiring and developing regional brands, as well as creating new brands to meet the needs of cannabis consumers worldwide. The company is backed by Canopy Growth Corporation and headquartered in Toronto. Investors valued the company at 645 million Canadian dollars prior to its IPO on the Canadian Securities Exchange on January 29, 2019. SLANG trades under the ticker symbol SLNG.
I'm with Peter Miller, the CEO of SLANG Worldwide. Peter, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, well, you are a new entrant into the public markets. I believe your stock went live January 29th. Mm-hmm. So you're only about a couple weeks old. At the time, you've issued 44 million subscription receipts, which raised about 66 million. You also had a private raise last summer as well. How is your cash position right now and for the next 2 or 3 quarters going forward as you seek to build out your company with a lot of larger competitors doing the same?
Yeah, so we're really lucky that everything we do is really capital light. We don't do any cultivation at scale. We don't do any retail. We find cultivation gets commoditized pretty quickly, and for the return you get, it's incredibly capital intensive, building out indoor greenhouses, anything really other than outdoor. And then on the retail side, we just don't want to compete with our customers. Retailers are our customers, and if you have a chain of stores, it's unlikely another chain of stores is interested in carrying your brands. And we can see that in the real world, mainstream grocers, any branded retail environment typically doesn't carry its competitors' products. So
you don't need a lot of capital.
No, where we live from extraction through wholesale distribution, it's very capital light, and we leverage partnerships. We're only interested in owning the pieces of the supply chain that we need to achieve our ultimate goal, which is getting products on shelves, as many shelves as possible, with our brands on them. And to that extent, we've done that better than almost anybody that I'm aware of.
Okay, well, speaking of partnerships, you have a well-known affiliation with Canopy Growth Corp. Mm-hmm. Obviously, that's big. That's the envy of a lot of different companies out there. Can you explain how are they a financial backer or are they an active participant in your model? How exactly does that relationship work?
Yeah, so the same way we have the biggest distribution footprint in the U.S., they have the largest in Canada. So very tangibly, we own a licensed producer together that allows our brands to get into the Canadian market and international markets. But the relationship goes back a little earlier. I was the very fortunate winner of an early license in Canada's vertically integrated limited model 6 years ago. And ultimately, as a co-founder of Metrum Health Corp, and that company being acquired by Canopy, we started developing a relationship, and they started to see what we were doing. My co-founder of SLANG, Billy Levy, and I, on the consumer packaged goods side. That experience in Canada really informed our whole view on the space, which is that this is going to brands, the markets will mature, regulation will normalize. And what we saw in the US over the years that we were developing the Canadian business was really exciting. You saw things shift from the mason jar with bud to more sophisticated finished goods, branded, and that was what was really exciting to us. So as we started building SLANG on the belief that ultimately brands would be the most important, and started acquiring and making investments, the Canopy folks who got to know us a little bit better post the Metrum transaction, I think saw an opportunity to get involved in that side of things. Obviously, with their position on owning US assets, we were limited in what we could do, so they couldn't make a direct equity investment, but they created a pretty creative warrant that allows them to acquire equity in SLANG when they have comfort with the federal law in the US.
Okay, so they could basically capture more of a equity stake in your company going forward. Do they help you manage? Do they provide advice and management with your company, either behind the scenes or overtly?
Overtly, no. I think there's a healthy back and forth. If they see something interesting or we see something interesting, we're industry friends and allies. So we'll compare notes. We'll point each other to something that might interest the other. We're excited about getting our brands into the Canadian market through their channels this fall. Our dominant products are more on the vapes, edibles, sort of value-added finished good, non-bud side of things. So later this year, next year, it's going to be really exciting for the lineup.
Okay, so are you planning on introducing your own brands, or are you going to white label brands under another name?
So SLANG's the holding company. The star of the show are the brands themselves that consumers can purchase, whether you're in Portland, Maine, Portland, Oregon, Portland, Jamaica. The OPEN, for example, is in 10 states and growing. That product was one of the first 510 thread vape cartridges in the US, and its lifetime sales at the cash register are approximately $200 million US. So that's a real brand with real penetration that consumers have been interacting with for a lot of years. We have brands that have been developed more recently, like Pressies. A pressed pill does incredibly well. It's a point-of-sale impulse buy at the cash register. It's opened a lot of doors. We have some great edible products. District Edibles is a great gummy brand. We've got Magic Buzz, a beverage product, and we're excited to bring branded bud at the really high end of the market to the states we operate in this year as well, under the Greenhouse and Strain Hunters names. So we're always on the lookout for exciting brands. We're developing things internally all of the time. Data really has to guide what we put our resources behind. But at this point, we have one of the most dominant portfolio of brands across almost every major category, with sales in about 2,600 stores across all of the products. We were the original MSO before it was an acronym. We've been in multiple U.S. states for a handful of years, and we're just really excited about building that portfolio of brands, both growing it organically through acquisition, et cetera.
So it sounds like you're in the same industry as an Origin House, for example. Are you seeing a lot of competition with some of the other distributors out there who take on different labels and do the outside distributing, or is that cutting into your margin? How does that work? How's your business in relation to, say, an Origin House?
Yeah. So, for example, I think they're more interested in the distribution side of things than brand ownership and development. And in some states, distribution requires a license, like California, but we self-distribute. So it's so early on that I don't think that we've seen a compelling reason to use a third-party distributor. No one has the scale that we have. So ultimately, we're lucky to sell a product that is very high value per gram of weight. It's not like we're distributing liquids that wholesale for 25 cents and weigh a pound.
And bottled water.
Exactly. So logistically, it's not that complex to ship the product. So distributors, for us, would be most valuable if they can open doors. But to that end, we've been able to open more doors into cannabis-centric retail than anybody. So I think Origin House, while I don't know a ton about it, I wouldn't really use it as a comp. We have a ton of competition at the ground level. Our brands compete in mature markets, in some categories with dozens of competitors. So we see those as our competition. And in the capital markets, I don't think anybody's taken as brand-focused an approach as we have.
Okay, so how does the company book revenues? When I go to your when I go to your website, I see a lot of great brands out there, but I don't see any sort of checkout or anything like that. So how does the company actually realize revenue on their income statement?
Sure. So you're correct. We don't do direct-to-consumer online. That's really tricky on the THC side right now.
CBD side, no?
The CBD side will open up on that front for sure, and we have some ideas around how to get into that market. I think fundamentally CBD will be a different skill set in terms of opening channels. More traditional retailers are embracing CBD, which is really exciting, and we've been really able to open a lot of THC doors. But CBD aside, back to your revenue question, imagine, and I'll maybe aspirationally use Coca-Cola as an example. that filling a can, adding syrup, and then putting the carbonated water in that was only legal on a state-by-state level. They actually have historically used bottlers to get into more territories on a capital light model the same way we do. But they'd only be able to book the revenue of that can and that syrup. So similarly, what we do is we say, here's packaging, here's non-cannabis ingredients, here's a very specific set of SOPs for making sure that that product's consistent across all of the markets, and then we'll look for partners and third parties to make sure that that product is produced exactly the same way, market to market, and then ultimately our revenues will be the licensing of that IP, the sale of that packaging, etc., and they'll be drop shipping to retailers whose doors we've opened for them.
Terrific. And lastly, what do SLANG Worldwide investors have to look forward to in the next, say, 2-3 quarters?
I was joking earlier that that cannabis moves in dog years, it seems like. So even our team in our 30s, we've been at this for 6 years, which feels like an eternity in cannabis time. So it's really hard to say what the next 2 to 3 quarters hold, but it's going to be more growth, getting into more doors, getting our products on more shelves, and everything in the supply chain will be looked at in terms of what's pragmatic to achieve our goals of creating as many branded experiences as possible for cannabis consumers.
Sounds good. Peter, thank you for joining us on the program. It was a great introduction to your company. We look forward to following your story going forward.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook. Make sure you never miss a show by subscribing to our YouTube channel and clicking on the little notifications bell. If you're interested in getting monthly actionable investment ideas in the cannabis space to your inbox, subscribe to the newsletter at MidasLetter.com.
So, what are your impressions of
he's
Mr. Miller?
obviously a bright young man, and I understand he's already sold a company, and
400+ million.
Look, it's like some of the young, like not just in the cannabis space, but we saw with some of the social media companies and what's going on with some of the, like Facebook comes to mind, Twitter comes to mind, not to the same extent, NVIDIA, but these are tech giants. Hey, you know what? More power to anybody that can come in, create something, sell it, and he's trying to do it slightly differently. I'm sure there's a non-compete clause if he sold something else. So this is probably a different type of business, even though it's related industry. You know what?
I think it's great to see. The young. He's obviously millennial. I think Peter is 33 or so, young, early 30s, and he's already sold the company for 400+ million, which he had obviously a big stake in, and now he's building up this company. So I think it's great. It's almost a story of, like you're saying, sort of the social media companies, the young guns kind of get in there, and I think it's great for the sector to see, to have some of the young enterprisers who come in here and build up value.
You know what? And when we talk about, what's one of the first things you do when investing in industry is you look to see who the main jockeys are, because you kind of bet the jockey, you don't bet the horse, because you got a jockey that's half crazed and smoking all the inventory. How can he win a race?
You don't want that. You don't want that.
You know what? I mean, sometimes there's always exceptions, but you want a guy. This guy looks like he's going to be a very successful businessman.
Yeah.
And he's got capital behind him. And look at the stock.
He's got capitals and backers.
No, another thing,
Canopy Growth.
they did the deal at $1.50. It opened at $2, went to $3, and the market was a little iffy at the time.
It's starting to turn. It's starting to turn at the time. So I'd agree. You definitely want people who've been there before, who've already sold the company, who have a track record, and they have the Canopy Growth backing. So, to be honest, I don't know too much about SLANG Worldwide.
They got a lot of product. They got all kinds of, in the opening slide, there's all kinds of products, all kinds of.
Kinds of products.
Yeah.
But I mean, without knowing too much about it, it sort of checks some of the boxes in terms of management and what they're doing.
Looks like this is a bit of a winner, chicken dinner.
Could be. As long as he doesn't smoke his own inventory.
Yeah. Well, there you go. Maybe we should think about getting some kind of chicken-infused, cannabis-infused chicken. No, chicken-infused cannabis.
That's right. Herb-infused cannabis.
There you go. Get high while you're eating your chicken. Kentucky Fried.
There you go.
Okay, so that was good. That was good.
So we're going to go from one millennial CEO to somebody a little bit more seasoned. In about 1 minute, we're going to have Mr. Rob Hill coming up from Norml Therapeutics, Health Therapeutics. So before we go there, Ed, are you seeing anything in the market very briefly?
I'm going to quickly get up the S&P chart. I want to see if what kind of day we have, and the kind of day we have is looks like that's a 10-day chart. Let's put up a 1 month chart.
S&P did nothing today. Flatline.
Yeah,
pretty much the whole day.
Yeah. Well, we've had two or three down days. Now we've got a slightly up day. When the market was really getting pounded, a month ago or 5-6 weeks ago, just before Christmas, the daily swings were huge. So the candlesticks. Here, let's just put up a 3 month. I'll show you my. So look at the length of the candles here, and here. They're much larger and keep in mind there's a wick, there's a tail, and then as the thing runs out of steam, the daily range sort of diminishes.
Yep.
And that makes sense because there's not as much energy because energy was back in here. So now we got a line here. I'll just quickly draw this in here. Look we got a line there, and we got another line here, but this line, there seems to be a little deviation from that initial powerful thrust.
Drifting outside the channel, but it needs a lower high on the hourly, a lower low on the hourly to really break that channel. Can it get thrust? We
always want to be aware of the powerful thrust.
The powerful thrust.
Just saying. Anyway, that's it for. Now, are we going to this other interview? Okay. I'll just.
So I've been informed that the CEO of Norml Health Therapeutics, Rob Hill, is ready.
And where's this coming?
Norml Health Therapeutics Inc. is a Canadian licensed producer of cannabis with indoor cultivation facilities in BC and Quebec. The company is focused on developing proprietary cannabis products for medical and adult use customers. Norml is part of the Norml Health Group, which represents a group of companies focused on developing pharmaceutical, botanical, and nutraceutical products to provide wellness and medical benefits by interacting with the human body's endocannabinoid system. Norml Health Therapeutics trades on the TSX Venture under the ticker symbol EMH.
Joining us outside the studio right now in BC is Rob Hill, the CFO of Norml Health Therapeutics. Rob, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Hi.
I hear you're getting a lot of snow in Vancouver. Is that right?
Yeah, some parts more than other. I had about an inch on my driveway, but some of my coworkers had upwards of 2 feet, believe it or not that far outside of Vancouver.
Is that a fact? Wow. Wow.
Now, Rob, I want to lead off with a question pertaining to your joint venture with Village Farms International. Of course, Village Farms has had the run-up lately. They've more than doubled in share price over the last few sessions, and they're starting to get more interest into that name. Now, your joint venture was signed in the summer of 2017. Can you give us an update about how that's playing out and where you stand on that for joint venture currently?
Yeah, it's a great partnership. We sought Village Farms out because of their expertise in growing on a massive scale. They weren't a cannabis company. We were the cannabis company. We had the expertise there. And so over the last 18 months or so, we've been building out a facility, a 1.1 million square foot greenhouse that up until November of 2017 was growing tomatoes. And the licensing process has been done in stages. and we got our first crops out of that location in Delta, just outside of Vancouver, last summer. And now we've expanded. We've got 850,000 of the 1.1 million square feet licensed and under cultivation. The remaining sections of it will come on stream soon. We expect to have the entire facility in cultivation during the first half of 2019.
Okay, is that product earmarked to go to retail outlets, provincial outlets across the country, or will some of that be diverted into oil production? What's your plan for that cultivation?
So and it'll also, part of it'll be used to supply our medical patients as well, but the vast majority of it will go to the recreational market as primarily in the early stages as dried flower. But we've seen the data coming out of the US, and even within our own experience as a licensed producer of cannabis with a decent sized medical practice, the shift that consumers have towards an extracted product. And so we'll see more and more of that coming out over this next year, we think.
Very good.
I got a
Ed has a question for you, Rob.
Yeah, Ed Milewski here, Rob. How many different products do you currently, or categories of products do you currently have?
Well, broadly speaking, Ed, we've got products, first of all, for medical patients and for recreation adult use patients. And then within that, we offer extracted product as oil and dried flower. So that's it, the extent of it at the moment. And they come in various quantities and things, but really it's about dried flower and oil, and extracted oil.
When's your next quarterly report coming out?
We'll have our Q4 report come out in the at the end of April.
Okay, we'll watch for that.
So I was thinking, since I have the CFO of the company in this interview right now, of course I got to ask you a financial question. How's the company's cash position, Rob? And what is Emerald Health Therapeutics' plans for expansion? And do you have enough cash to further that expansion?
So at the end of our last reported figure, we had $53,000. We raised another $10.8 million in December. So we've got lots of cash. We continue to spend it quickly because, as you allude to, we've got some capital projects going where we have a facility in Quebec, which is currently producing, but we're expanding that facility from its existing 25,000 feet of production. It'll get up to 85,000 feet now, and that's because we've added a mezzanine layer to put in some processing capacity. We've also got some expansion projects going on locally here in the Vancouver area, and we are investing. You've seen some news come out recently with investments and partnerships that we've created with Emerald Health Naturals, which is a joint venture between ourselves, Emerald Health Therapeutics, and an affiliated company out of San Diego to distribute natural products. So that's going to be using cash. And so while we have a fair amount of cash on the balance sheet at the moment, we anticipate having to go to market again at some point in the next few months.
Okay.
Now I've noticed with the recent news cycle, like you said, you got into the health food market in the United States, and there's also, I believe, a CBD extraction product. CBD extraction project in Italy. So it seems to me that Emerald Health is expanding their reach worldwide. Now, is it? I guess it's a concerted effort for the company to branch out, and now is the right time to expand internationally instead of, historically you've been sort of keeping it relatively within borders.
Yeah, good question. Canada is a great economy, but it's only like roughly 2% of the total global GDP. And so naturally, with plans and the capacity and the infrastructure we're building, we're going to be looking overseas. And so this particular arrangement you alluded to, Indina, is really an exciting event for us. We announced it last week. Indina is among the world leaders in extraction technology, and we have 500 acres of hemp that we harvested last fall, and we have sitting, and we are going to extract CBD from that hemp. And important in that will be the technology that Indina has now licensed to us, and it allows us to more effectively and efficiently tap into that CBD that's in 500 acres worth of hemp, which translates to about 135,000 kilograms of dried biomass. So that whole play into CBD is really a big part of our plans, but we think there's a big market for that here in Canada, actually. And so we'll extract, again, with Indina's technology, and then as well, a partnership that we announced recently, or last summer, actually, with Factors Group Technology. And Factors Group has massive scale for extraction and soft gel manufacturing capability that we're going to tap into. That'll all be used to help us get great quality products to market that people are looking for.
That's great. So I suppose you see that with the shortages of CBD oil and also dry flower here in Canada. I'm assuming that Emerald Health sees the opportunity to perhaps break in amongst sort of the the bigger tier 1 LPs and create a brand, either through white label or creating your own retail brands within Canada. There's definitely that opportunity that there seems to be a large runway with that. The shortages aren't ending soon.
Yeah, we see a huge opportunity to get products. A lot of them are CBD based. They have there's such strong indications of that particular cannabinoid, but there's a host of others as well that we're focused on. But there's strong indication that CBD has wonderful health implications and the ability to enhance people's health, and we are really focused on that. We have a number of patents in the works that are being developed, and all towards developing innovative products that will enhance the health of our clients and people across Canada. So this massive amount of hemp that we've got, that we've harvested, and we have another harvest plan it'll get planted next spring. That's a big part of that story, and it gets us. We're talking about a quantity of biomass that we have supply sources that I think put us in there with among the very biggest of the players in the space in Canada right now.
Rob, what would be the percentage of CBD versus THC in your line of products? Is that an easy question to answer?
Well, yeah. I mean, we have products that are very high in CBD and very low in THC. So that's a product that won't give you much of a it'll
sure.
give you no psychoactive effect. And we have products that are very high in THC and low in CBD, and then we have one-to-one type products. We have a mix because depending on what you're trying to achieve from a therapeutic effect, each one of those has a role to play.
Do you see from your corporate perspective? Do you get the sense that if you're formulating sort of a plan to go one way or the other, you're going to continue to just go in both areas until it becomes apparent that one's more important than the other?
Yeah, that's a good question. We are working on developing. I mentioned we had 17 patents in process at the moment, but we're continuing to flesh out what the road ahead looks like in terms of products and where we're going to innovate. I can definitely see CBD being a big part of that future. THC actually also has important therapeutic effects, and there's a big demand in the marketplace for it. But we're pushing ahead on both fronts for now, and we'll sort of let the market and let our own internal research help guide exactly how and when we shift into one particular area. And let's not forget that aside from THC and CBD, there is upwards of 150 or more different active ingredients that are coming out of cannabis, the so-called cannabinoids, that we're also investigating as well.
Very good.
Okay, that's a great update, Rob. Thanks for joining us on the program, and best of luck going forward. We'll be following your story closely.
Thanks, Rob.
Thanks for having me. Bye for now.
It's a great company.
It looks, that they've got a market cap of about $500 million, and I'm sort of curious, especially when you think about there's a lot of people that are now 60 years old in Canada, like the baby boomers. I think that we looked it up one day. The year with the most births was about 57, 58, and I'm a sort of leading edge of that. You're well, you're not even thinking about that stuff. But
I hope so.
As these boomers get older, the use for like a lot of pain, that people are taking painkillers. You don't need to take painkillers when you're taking the herb.
No, it's a very, CBD is a very good anti-inflammatory,
so I'm wondering,
sleep aid.
Yeah, I know.
Tons of therapeutic qualities.
Yeah. And you can. It'll be interesting to see if there's a dominant. What's going to be that, and I kind of think it's going to be that medical, not necessarily medical. You need a prescription, but
that's a word I always like to hear, and Rob brought it up, is patent. You always want to hear a company that's patenting things. Not all of them will pan out, but if they do,
the only thing when you say patent, this has got nothing to do with the marijuana industry. I've seen companies with patents, and they can't enforce them, and like Wi-Fi. There's a company out of Toronto, out of the out west somewhere. They had these patents, and everybody said they're going to print money, and only a few companies, sent them any money. Like I shouldn't even. I'm just talking.
It may not be enforceable, is what you're saying.
I don't know. You know what?
Depending on what it is, of course.
I've had bad experiences when people say we've got these patents, and I'm thinking, okay, maybe it's a good thing.
Here's that talk again. Anyway, so we're going to.
So the market's closed.
The market's closed, Ed. So I'm going to give you, first dibs on this.
Yeah. Okay. Go ahead.
No, I'm going to give you first dibs on this.
All right.
What's your impression on the way we closed?
Well, you know what? I got to tell you, this market has been sort of a digital. The marijuana space is sort of like a digital market, zeros and ones, right?
Are we talking cryptocurrency?
No,
or are we talking marijuana?
We're just talking that it's either up or down. Like it rarely sits there and does nothing. Like, and we've had a good run, and then we've had that bobblehead, and now like we're seeing, it seems to be the path of least resistance now. Seems to be. I don't want to get ahead of scare anybody, but if you made a nice run here and if you were invested, you should have been taking some money off the table, because it's got to drive you crazy if you go up and go all the way back, and what for? Like,
yeah.
And I've been there as an investor, and I'm sure you have too. That's why I like to use stops now. I say if I see a number that I don't think is going to happen, that's a trigger. Like, I didn't think this was going to happen, and it did. So maybe the rest of my thesis is incorrect.
You know what? Just to add to that, and I talked a little bit about it on Friday's show, how I'm going to be on a crusade of the next big move.
How did you say you're going to be on a cruise?
Well, hopefully.
How about you go on a crusade on a cruise?
If I ever get my Christmas bonus, I'll go on a cruise perhaps. But
cruise your way into the crusade. Okay.
But no, but honestly, it's about, like you said, the market tends to go up and down. It's either very strong or very weak. There's not a lot of milieu in it. You have the odd day where the indexes don't do so too much.
A lot of red or a lot of green.
Right, but generally speaking, it is that, and it's kind of weird how in weed stocks how the buyers come in and it's propped up, and there doesn't seem to be necessarily a catalyst, and then it will go down almost just as much, and there doesn't necessarily be a catalyst. So it's very tough because you don't. Like, the catalysts a lot of times aren't overt, right? I mean, they just sort of appear, or they're not. They don't appear, and you don't know why things have just dropped 30% over the last week or two, and nothing really happened, nothing changed. I mean, that's just sort of the way the market.
I say that all the time. I say, like, why is, and maybe it's like the weather, like, why is it really hot today and tomorrow it's cool? But like, we saw some real action. I remember watching like Kronos, thinking, this thing, when's it going to stop? Like, I mean, and I'm thinking, why didn't I buy this and just close my eyes for a week?
Right. And there was no catalyst.
It hit 32, 33 bucks. I can't remember the exact number. And today it's printing close to 25. So that's a major lop off,
Yeah, there was no real catalyst on the way up that I could see. I mean, it was tactically strong, but the buying kept coming in, and investors looking at this from the outside, and including myself, were like, why is it going up this much? But it's important for investors to realize that when there's a bid underneath the stock, or there's a ceiling over the stock keeping it down, you don't want to fight it. You don't want to look for reasons why it's doing something. You want to look at the price action, and you want to get confirmation signals, right? Instead of looking for reasoning of why something does something. Let the price action sort of dictate. That's what I would. I'm on a crusade to tell investors, to look for those type of things.
There's Kronos now. We can put this chart up. and this is a 2-year. We don't need that, but let's put up a 3-month. And look at this. This candle here, well through the Bollinger Band, and you know, and I use that Bollinger Band if it's already in an upward move and it starts to go exponential in that move. Yeah, I use that as a sort of a signal that maybe the move's over a bit, and now we've come down a bit. And you know, these trends, they give you some guidance for a while, then they break. So if you're in something that's going sideways and you want more action, you may be able to get into something else, make some money, and go back to where you were, because that where you came from is not moving. And there's stocks like that, right? Like that are range, like they're just pacing.
Yeah, 100%. And you know, further to my earlier point, I'm looking at the news flow in Chronos for the month of January.
Nothing.
There was nothing. I mean, there was literally nothing. You know, December 14th was one, and then there wasn't a material press release until, hold on one second, January 18th. And even that, they announced the mailing of meeting materials in connection with their upcoming special meeting. And then 5 days later, all they announced was a $65 million credit facility. That's not market-moving stuff.
How much was it? How much is it?
$65 million credit facility. Somebody's loaning the money.
Know, if you loaning the money and they supposedly have this big cash injection, I don't understand. Now,
well, I don't think the injections happened yet, but
okay.
I could be wrong on that.
You're probably right. But you know, if let's say you're going into a hot sector and you're sitting there and you're thinking, well, what should I invest in? And somebody says, well, look, this company's partnered with Altria, and it looks like they're going to inject a couple of billion. You'd say, well, geez, that's got to give some safety there. So if I'm going to go into the space, maybe I'm going to put money in, and they say, look, this thing's up $2-3 every day. So that'd be enough to say, hey, why don't I bet that trend is going to continue for a couple more days? So you pick up a couple thousand shares. It's liquid as anything that's out there. I'd say it's the best performing stock that we've seen that I know of in the sector.
Right.
In this last run.
But if investors were looking for news as to rationalize why it's going up, or perhaps even taking a quick short bet because the move was irrational because there's no news flow, that is not the way that I would play the sector.
I know.
It's what I'm getting at.
But sometimes news, like sell on news. No news keeps going up.
Keep going up.
You know, it's so perverted in a sense.
Right.
You know, like when you can start to quantify, then it gets so easy to value it, and then you say, geez, this thing's overvalued. With no news, you can't value it. Or you know what I'm trying to say? Like it's
exactly.
Buy in mystery, sell in history is another way of saying it.
Right. But because of the visibility aspect of press releases, a lot of investors look for reasons to get in or reasons for the move in the press release cycle, but they have to realize that it doesn't always come there. You can have these tremendously strong moves without necessarily being public news disseminated on its behalf, right? So that's sort of our PSA for the day for investors.
Yeah, well, and you know, being on the show every day is a discipline. It's given me the discipline to follow things, not because I'd follow for a day or two, you know. Mr. Discipline here, I think I'll sleep today.
Is that in between cannabis joints, Ed?
Yeah, that's probably the problem, right? Now I got to keep my nose clean a bit.
Okay, so
we won't go there.
On that great note, in a moment, we're going to be on the line with Deepak Anand, but first.
Scientists have been conducting experiments on spiders and intoxicants all the way back to 1948. But in 1995, NASA scientists tried to replicate some German studies by supplying run-of-the-mill house spiders with caffeine, amphetamines, marijuana, and chloral hydrate. Depending on the substance they were exposed to, they spun unconventional webs. The more toxic the chemical, the more deformed the web looked compared to what they regularly produced. On cannabis, the spiders easily became sidetracked while spinning and left their work unfinished.
Or ML.
Yeah. Welcome back, everybody. On the line joining us is the one and only Deepak Anand. Welcome, Deepak.
Thanks for having me.
Great. It's the first time we've spoken, so it's a pleasure's all mine. Now, I wanted to ask you, getting right into it, how are things at your new vocation at Norml? Do you like working on the policy side of the equation a little bit more than your last gig, or how's that working out for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've always been involved in the policy side. For very many years, I've assisted both federal as well as provincial governments on cannabis policy, and the role at Norml is just further expanding that anyways. One of the biggest things that we're sort of moving forward on Norml is the whole amnesty piece, because quite frankly, we've gone forward with legalization, and we've unrolled a number of things in various provinces, but one of the big issues that still is unresolved is Canadians still continue to be charged unfairly for cannabis-related offenses, and more importantly, there's a number of Canadians that are charged historically for minor possession, and one of the things that Norml we're trying to do is fight or lobby for that.
Oh, it appears we've lost Deepak for a moment. We're going to try to reach him back.
Yeah, it's difficult to carry on a conversation when there's when the lines of communication have been broken.
Well, didn't you say that there's a snowstorm in Vancouver? Maybe something down the power line?
Did he see? There we are.
There, you're back.
Back.
Yeah, sorry, not in Vancouver, but in Miami. But yeah, I guess the Wi-Fi was glitchy.
Okay.
Sorry, you were saying, Deepak?
No snow in Miami.
So one of the things that we're looking to actively sort of lobby for is to ensure that Canadians that have been unfairly charged for cannabis-related offences are granted amnesty to some end. And there is that issue that sort of is looming because a number of people to this day, can apply for licenses. They can't travel to the U.S. I mean, it's a serious issue.
Okay, can you tell me what is the motivation or the backers behind the criminality of cannabis infractions, if you want to call it? Is it just a sort of a public service that people are trying to get people not charged under cannabis laws or predatory cannabis laws, or is there a real backer behind it? And what is the motivation behind that? Is it just sort of a policy think tank thing?
Yeah, I mean, historically, we've had laws in this country that would prohibit anyone from sort of undertaking cannabis retail businesses. And a lot of the laws, whilst the Cannabis Act may have come into effect, a number of laws relating to amnesty and particularly possession and simple possession charge under the previous regulations still hold. I mean, one of the things that the Liberal government said when they were legalizing cannabis was, they would look at sort of cannabis amnesty once they've dealt with legalization. And now that the legalization file is unraveled, we very much look forward to working with them to ensure that we hold their feet to the fire as far as cannabis amnesty is concerned.
Sounds good. Now, switching gears to CBD oil, there's been a lot of talk about all the therapeutic benefits, and of course there are plenty. It's anti-inflammatory, it helps you sleep, there's a lot of good attributes to it. Now, I want to get your thoughts about whether you think CBD oil ultimately is a little bit of a fad, or do you think it will eventually exceed expectations about the therapeutic aspects that it can bring to patients?
Look, I mean, CBD is definitely being hailed as this miracle drug. And don't get me wrong, I think there's certainly a lot of value therapeutically for CBD in a number of different conditions. And while there's a
Backside apparently does not have good Wi-Fi connection.
Yeah.
I really wanted to hear that answer too.
Yeah,
hopefully we get them on the line.
Is this a Canadian organization?
Norml, I believe so. Sorry, Deepak.
I'll ask him that.
Yeah, no problem. Sorry. So what I was saying on the CBD side is, clearly there are, a number of benefits with CBD. There's a number of clinical evidence currently being formed around CBD in a variety of different conditions. And whilst it may be beneficial for certain conditions, I think that we're getting ahead of ourselves in many ways. If you look at what's happening in the UK as an example, I just got back yesterday, and there's CBD everything in a whole bunch of high street stores stores or pharmacies that are available over the counter, whilst the product in general remains unregulated. Germany is the same story, and now we're seeing the U.S. Look to sort of put some of the toothpaste back in the tube. I think there are benefits for CBD, clearly for some conditions, but I think we're getting ahead of ourselves here by just producing a whole bunch of CBD products. And I think if you look at the Canadian perspective, I think we're doing it right. We are looking to regulate both THC and CBD in terms of how it can be used, whether that be CBD water, whether that be CBD in vitamins, etc. I mean, quite frankly, we don't know all of the details around CBD at this point, and whilst it may have therapeutic sort of potential for some, it's not this miracle hail-all drug that people seem to be making it out to be.
Okay, when do you expect the regulation behind the manufacturing and safety profile of CBD is going to be generalized within the industry? Because as you mentioned, there's a lot of unregulated CBD out there. A lot of it that, there's not that regulation framework to really help it. How long do you expect that to catch up? Is it going to happen, now that the Farm Bill is passed, is going to happen within, say, 12 to 24 months?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the U.S. FDA has clearly said that they're going to look at sort of, regulating CBD. They're, we've seen a number of states move forward now and actually take CBD off shelves completely, not allowing dispensaries or retail stores to, even carry CBD. So, whilst I think the U.S. needs to do a number of things from a federal legality standpoint, I think that, the latest move with the Farm Bill clearly and getting the U.S. FDA involved clearly shows that this is going to be a regulated industry. It's going to be something that is very new to the U.S. I mean, whilst they've had a number of different products around for very many years, including CBD products, I think the time's changed, and I think a number of these companies are going to have to get into compliance from a regulatory perspective, and I think that's predominantly what the United States Food and Drug Administration is looking at, is making sure that anything that's currently on the shelves is safe for human consumption. Because quite frankly, for too long, the product's been unregulated, untested, and by and large unsafe. Potentially full of pesticides and other heavy metals, etc. There was a study that was just done yesterday that looked at 6 CBD products on the market and either found no CBD in it or found dangerously high levels of pesticides and other sort of harmful ingredients in the product. So that is going to have to change, and I think that's predominantly what the U.S. FDA is looking to do at this point.
Deepak, your company is a Canadian company, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. I sit on the board of a number of different organizations. I think what we were talking about earlier was an organization called Norml. Norml is a worldwide organization, and it stands for the Organization for Marijuana Laws and Reform against sort of unjust laws. One of the other organizations that I sit on the board of is an entity called CFAMM, and that's Canadians for Fair Access to Medical Cannabis. And I think you'll hear a lot this week in terms of some of the initiatives that we're working on to eliminate tax for medical cannabis. These are non-for-profit entities that I sit on the board of.
You're talking to other countries all the time, I guess, and looking at different approaches, different ways to sort of have a unified view of, how this should be handled, so that there's not a lot of differences between countries.
Yes, absolutely. One of the things that I've been doing is working very closely with a number of different federal governments as a policy advisor to kind of assist them in understanding sort of all of the implications of this. And I mean, the fact that, we as Canada have been sort of the second nation and really the first G7 nation to legalize both THC and CBD in medical cannabis and non-medical cannabis in general, I think there's a number of lessons to be learned here. And I think that's what when talking to new countries, that's one of the things that sort of, I advise them is let's not make the same mistakes that Canada has made. And I think there's a lot to be learned from the Canada experiment, as I would call it. But there's also some opportunities to create some new frameworks. And each of these countries has their own unique challenges, and they need to work within it. So that's the interesting part. whilst all this is happening, I mean, the whole United Nations just released a report, by the WHO, which is the World Health Organization, that sort of called for complete declassification or deregulation of CBD and removing it from any treaties. So there's, a whole bunch of other things that are happening internationally on this file that seem to be moving almost daily, and we're seeing more and more countries, daily almost look at legalizing medical cannabis. So it's quite exciting from that front.
Sure.
Okay, Deepak, I know the capital markets perhaps isn't your primary focus, but I wanted to get your thoughts about the Canadian LP advantage, especially on the Tier 1 side, the Canopys, Afreas, and so forth. Now, there's a line of thinking out there that believes that the Tier 1 Canadian LPs have a decided advantage internationally because they've already set up shop. They have different agreements in other countries like Germany, the UK, and Latin America, as opposed to the multi-state operators down in America. So do you consider this a big head start and a big advantage that the Canadian LPs on the capital market side can parlay into against their MSO neighbors down south who aren't really even established internationally?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you look at predominantly the European market, I mean, it is a medical cannabis market currently. If you look at Germany, you look at the UK, you look at Greece, you look at a number of other European countries, they're all currently going down or have gone down the medical path, and they require something called GMP, which is good manufacturing practices. Really, only 6 companies in Canada currently have it. There's about a couple more that are currently going through the process, but it is a difficult process to go under. And I mean, it's taken these 6 LPs that currently have this a great deal of time to be able to get this GMP certification. It's a higher quality of a quality management system than the ACMPR regulations under which majority of the Canadian licensed producers currently operate. That program is called something as GPP, a good production practices, and then good manufacturing practices is something that pharma companies follow. So really, these 6 companies have a global opportunity at the moment to be able to dominate the landscape, and they certainly are. We're seeing a number of countries already start to export to Germany. I think this week we've seen, today Aurora announced their first shipment to the UK. Last week, Canopy made a similar announcement. When you compare that, to the US, I mean, your question around will we face sort of threat from the US? I think that a number of US multi-state operators or MSOs have been operating, sort of in absence of any federal regulations, and certainly haven't been able to get this coveted GMP certification from Europe because, you can only get GMP certification if your country actually has a federal framework. And because the US is absent on that and is still going to remain absent for quite some time on that, I think there's a real opportunity for Canadian companies here to compete on the global scale. Now, keep in mind, I don't think the risk is necessarily the U.S. or the threat is the U.S. at this point. I'm paying very close attention to Israel. Israel was recently allowed to start to export medical cannabis, and it's something that has been stalled for very many years by their parliament, but the government's finally given them approval. And a lot of the operators there currently already have this coveted GMP certification. So for them to be able to export into the European market is not going to be a significant challenge. So, I don't think the U.S. is as much as a threat on the international side, but I certainly see countries like Israel and others that will get GMP sort of established being a threat to Canadian licensed producers.
Wow, very interesting answer. Deepak, thank you so much for joining us on the program. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Deepak.
Wow, that was that final statement that Deepak mentioned surprised me a little bit. So, it sounded to me that he thinks some of the competition on the Canadian LP side internationally is actually going to not come from the MSOs right now in the United States, but places like Israel and stuff, which is something I haven't heard about too often, but it makes sense.
I can't believe that if this you get this hot market where you get this huge valuation. People are watching this, right? Anyway, there aren't many marijuana companies going public in London, England right now.
No, there aren't. There really aren't many up.
So where are we now here? What's up next?
So we are going to take it to the feature. Right now, we have our feature is how can cannabis affect your sperm mobility? Sean Cookson finds out.
Butterflies do it. Beetles do it. To me, they seem a little lazy when it comes to sex. Pigs do it, and we do it. But I'm not here to give you a lesson in sex. Let's talk about if you have enough spunk when you're high on skunk. Is it true that by taking cannabis, your sperm count decreases? Or are they just chilling?
Hey Ralph, what are you up to today? Not much, Frank, just chilling. Oh, maybe not. He's at it again. See you on the other side, pal.
The Boston University study was the first to look specifically at the link between pot use and the likelihood of conceiving. Harvard University researchers tested sperm of 600 men who were currently enrolled at fertility clinics and asked them about their previous drug taking. Around half of the men tried or currently use cannabis, and the researchers found just 5% had clinically low sperm counts, compared to 12% of those who had never tried it. The study also found the cannabis user participants had higher testosterone levels, the male sex hormone that plays a key role in behavior and sperm production. But hold on, are we being too premature when it comes to these findings?
There's very limited research on THC and fertility and sperm in general, but there was a very good study that was done where they took sperm samples from men, and some of those sperm samples were very high quality, and some of them were borderline, and some were low quality sperm samples. And then they exposed those sperm samples to various concentrations of THC in a dish in the laboratory. And they used 3 concentrations of THC that were meant to mimic high or daily usage, moderate usage, or occasional usage of marijuana.
So what did they find?
What they found was that across the board, all of the sperm were affected by the THC. The motility in particular, that's the movement of the sperm, was slower after exposure to THC. And in the sperm samples that were borderline quality to begin with, the THC had the most profound effect. So in fact, in the borderline quality sperm samples, they had a 56% reduction in motility. Sperm mobility is important because the sperm has a long way to travel from the time that it reaches the entrance to the uterus, which is the cervix, and it's supposed to swim all the way through the uterus into the fallopian tube to meet the egg. And in order to do that, sperm have to be able to swim really fast and in a purposeful or straight direction.
But wait, there's more.
There was a study published last year. They followed about 1,800 people in various areas of the US, meant to be a representative sample. And all of these people were trying to conceive, and they were asked in a survey, one of the questions was, do you use marijuana? And 16% of men and 11% of women reported being daily users of marijuana. And what they tracked was how long did it take those people to become pregnant. And based on the survey data, they found there was no difference in the time to become pregnant in the users of marijuana and the never or non-users of marijuana. As a fertility doctor, for now, I would recommend that people abstain or at least minimize the use of marijuana and cannabis products while they're trying to be pregnant. And certainly in pregnant and breastfeeding women, they should avoid those things altogether.
So, if you're serious about having a baby, maybe holding off on cannabis is a good idea until further studies are done. For Midas Letter Live, I'm Sean Cookson.
I don't know, maybe that's why so many millennials aren't having kids. Ed, what do you think?
I don't know. It's you know, I don't even know if I want to
comment on that one.
Well, I got older children, and I got to tell you, in most, if you just look at Europe, say, look at big cities like France, Germany, Russia, Canada, I don't think families are. I don't think the population is replacing itself with I know certainly in the Spanish-speaking segment it is, and I know it is in the Middle Eastern culture. But no, just about everywhere else, it's like people are.
It's below replacement rate. I think the replacement rate's about 2.1 kids per couple.
I think it's either 2.1 or 2.2.
2.1, 2.2, yeah, it's somewhere there, and Italy's
hard to
around
get to
1.2.
I know. Yeah,
you know, Canada's at 1.3.
Germany's
we have a high immigration
low.
population.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Germany's low. Greece is around, you know, skirting 1 almost, or some well down.
Yeah, I know. So is it because, you know, it's a bit of a, you know, crazy world. You know, like when you're in the farming, the agriculture world. You had a lot of children to help on the farm back in the day, right?
Yep.
That times have changed.
Maybe we're smoking too much cannabis. Anyway.
Yeah.
What's coming up tomorrow, Ed? Tomorrow we have Keith Merker.
Remember we talked about weed. Yeah, there you go.
WeedMD. I believe he's a London resident as well.
Yeah.
Dennis Laviolette from Gold Spot Discovery CEO. Not familiar with the company. Do you know it, Ed?
You know what? I don't know it, but I may take a look when I'm on the train tonight. I may.
Sounds good. Stephen Roman, Gold Corp.
I'm going to be interviewing Stephen, and that's a recent Ontario producer.
Oh, it is.
They're producing gold.
Timmins, around Timmins area.
You know what? I'm going to hone up on that again, and but you know, it's a big piece of property, and
I know you're saying good things about that. So we'll have more on that tomorrow.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's it for today's show. Thanks for joining us, everybody. We'll see you back here tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.